Ahab, Part 1. And so this is on the bottom of the page, says page 28. So King Ahab, Part 1. And I'm going to read a few verses for us in 1 Kings 16, at the end of the chapter, starting at 25 and going all the way to 34. And then we'll answer some questions. So 1 Kings 16, and I'm starting at verse 25. Omri did evil in the sight of the Lord and acted more wickedly than all who were before him. For he walked in all the way of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and in his sins which he made Israel sin, provoking the Lord God of Israel with their idols. Now the rest of the acts of Omri which he did, and his might which he showed, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Omri slept with his fathers and was buried in Samaria, and Ahab his son became king in his place. Now Ahab the son of Omri became king over Israel in the 38th year of Asa king of Judah, and Ahab the son of Omri reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. Ahab the son of Omri did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all who were before him. It came about as though it had been a trivial thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, that he married Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and went to serve Baal and worshipped him. So he erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he built in Samaria. Ahab also made the Asherah. Thus Ahab did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel than all the kings of Israel who were before him. In his days Hiel the Bethelite built Jericho. He laid its foundations with the loss of Abiram, his firstborn, and set up its gates with the loss of his youngest son Segub, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by Joshua the son of Nun. So, on our sheets, Ahab the son of Omri, king of Israel, is one of the most well-known kings of the Jewish people. He reigned from about 874 to 853 BC over the northern kingdom, Israel, as opposed to the southern kingdom, Judah. He is known as among the most wicked of all Jewish sovereigns. His story occupies several chapters of 1 Kings and is intertwined with the narratives of the prophet Elijah and the king of Judah, Jehoshaphat. So, question number 1. What sort of man was King Omri, Ahab's father? He did evil in the sight of Yahweh and acted more wickedly than all who were before him, for he walked in all the way of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and in his sins which he made Israel sin, provoking Yahweh God of Israel with their idols. So notice the repetition of the word all, and it's pointing out Ahab is worse than everybody who came before him. So these other kings were wicked, they did bad things, but Ahab tops them all. So Omri tops them all up to this point. Number 2, how long would Ahab reign? 22 years. Number 3, what record of his fathers did Ahab break? He did evil in the sight of Yahweh more than any or all who were before him. So Omri was bad, and now Ahab's going to get worse. And the comparison too with Jeroboam. So that was the first king of the northern kingdom, and it's a sad and strange thing that he set the tone for all these other kings. Strange, isn't it, how one generation, one individual can kind of set the frame for several generations after that. One person, either for good or for ill, can set a tone for a whole family. And in a small community, sometimes somebody gets a reputation for being a thief or a crook, and generations later, the neighbors all still remember, yep, Uncle whoever, he was a bad guy. So Jeroboam set the stage for, he's the one that people are getting compared to in this line. Number 4, did he, Ahab, follow in Jeroboam's idolatry? Yes, he did. So Jeroboam, if you remember back, what kind of idols did Jeroboam set up? Golden calves, one at Dan and one at Bethel. So he's the one who introduced idolatry in a formal, official way with government approval into the northern kingdom. And now Ahab is going to top that record too. Number 5, did Ahab consider this a big deal? No. He married Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians. Pause there. Sidonians, that's from the city of Sidon. Where is Sidon? Mediterranean. It's on the coast. It'd be in Lebanon today. So in those days it was the kingdom of Phoenicia, and today it's the land of Lebanon. But the people worshipped Baal or Baal, this fertility god, god of war and thunder and fertility. They made idols to him. They worshipped him. And Baal had a consort, Asherah or Ishtar, and that was either his sister or his lover or his mother, or sometimes all three at once. So, you know, wicked, wicked religion. And this is what the people worshipped. So Ahab married the daughter of the king of Sidon and brings her down to Samaria. And he went to serve Baal and worshipped him. And by the way, Jezebel's not his only wife. As was the case with many ancient kings, they had multiple wives. Number 7, was God pleased with him? No, not by any means. Ahab did more to provoke Yahweh, God of Israel, than, did I skip 6? I did, sorry. Number 6. What did he make in the capital city of Israel, God's chosen people? He erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he built in Samaria. Ahab also made the Asherah. The Asherah is this female cult goddess. So he made images of her. And God is not pleased with him. He did more to provoke the Lord than all the kings of Israel who were before him. Now, if you're following along in the Bible, go to 1 Kings 17. And this is where we get introduced to Elijah. We haven't seen him before, and he just kind of shows up. 1 Kings 17, and I'm going to read the first 7 verses. Now Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab, as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, surely there shall be neither dew nor rain these years, except by my word. The word of the Lord came to him, saying, go away from here and turn eastward and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. It shall be that you will drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to provide for you there. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord, for he went and lived by the brook Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he would drink from the brook. It happened after a while that the brook dried up because there was no rain in the land. I've often wondered about this scene. Every morning, birds flap down in a little, he's got a little cave or a little lean-to or whatever, and birds show up and they drop off some food, and that's his breakfast, supplied by birds. And when he gets thirsty, he goes to drink at the brook, and at nighttime, it repeats. Here come the ravens, and they're going to bring his supper every day. But then I wonder, as the drought took hold, month after month after month, at some point, the Cherith, this little creek, begins to dry up. And, what was that like for Elijah? Did he just say, God has been miraculously supplying me by ravens, so I guess I can trust him to get me water when the time is right? It doesn't say anything about it, but he evidently was a man of faith, even in the way that he went in and talked to Ahab in his own palace. So he went in and said, it's not going to rain. And what was that based on? Yeah, the Old Testament law. It says in Deuteronomy chapter 28, if you obey me I'm going to give you rain, the early rains and the latter rains, and you're going to be okay. If you go after other gods, if you worship idols, then I'm going to turn the heavens into a dome of bronze. In other words, no rain. And when you walk, it's just going to be dry dust and powder. That's what's going to happen. And so Elijah was actually just taking God at his word. And he was saying, this is what God said. This is the condition. This nation is full of idolatry. And so no rain. So he was actually just claiming the promise of God, the statement of God. And that was his faith. So I think I just answered a bunch of the questions. Number 8, who showed up in King Ahab's court one day? That would be Elijah the Tishbite. What did he say to Ahab? As Yahweh, the God of Israel, lives, in other words, just as surely as he is alive, here's what's going to happen. Before whom I stand, surely there will be neither dew nor rain these years, except by my word. So he's saying it's no dew, so not even a little bit of dew. You know how refreshing that is if it hasn't rained in a while, but you still get some cooling effect. No dew either. And then in verse 10, how could a man claim power over vast weather patterns out of Deuteronomy 28? If you, Israel, will not obey Yahweh your God, all these curses shall come upon you. The heaven which is over your head shall be bronze. The Lord will make the rain of your land powder and dust. And did this proclamation come true? Yes, it did. That is exactly what happened. So we're not going to read all of chapter 18, but I am going to read a couple of verses out of that chapter. So this is after 3 years, specifically 3.5 years, we're told in the book of James. And Elijah meets Ahab's chief steward. So kind of the chamberlain, the guy who keeps the palace running. And he is a believer in Yahweh. So in that godless place where everybody is worshiping false gods, this one guy, Obadiah, he has remained faithful and loyal to the true God of Israel. You have a question? No. I was looking at Carl. Yeah, okay. And so Obadiah meets Elijah, and Elijah says to Obadiah, go back and tell Ahab, here I am. So we're gonna jump in. Look at verse 17. So this is Ahab and Elijah meeting, 18:17 of 1 Kings. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, is this you, you troubler of Israel? He said, I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, because you have forsaken the commandment of the Lord, and you have followed the Baals. Now then send and gather to me all Israel at Mount Carmel, together with 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of the Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table. So Ahab sent a message among all the sons of Israel and brought the prophets together at Mount Carmel. Elijah came near to all the people and said, how long will you hesitate between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him. But the people did not answer him a word. And so he makes an announcement. He says, we got all these prophets here. Take 2 cows, and the prophets of Baal, they're going to pick 1 cow, slaughter it, cut it up, and lay it on an altar, but don't light a fire. And they're going to pray to their God, and I'm going to do the same with the other cow, and I'm going to pray to Yahweh, the God of Israel, the true and living God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the God who answers by fire, he's the real God. And the people, the audience, say, that's a good idea. Let's do that. And so there's an audience on top of the mountain watching this spectacle that lasts all day long. The whole thing lasts all day. And you know the end of the story, that the prophets of Baal are jumping around and gashing themselves and bleeding all over. They think that's how you get their God's attention. And Elijah takes the opportunity to make fun of them. He says, you know, you need to shout louder. He might be on vacation, or maybe he stepped into the restroom for a minute, or you know, you got to get his attention. And so they jump and holler louder. And at the end, they've been doing this hours, all from the morning through noontime, all the way till about 4:30 or so in the afternoon. And then Elijah stands up and he tells all the people, come closer, come close. So they can watch. They're real close. And then he rebuilds an ancient altar to Yahweh that was on top of that mountain. 12 stones. Why 12? 12 tribes of Israel. And then he gets the wood on, and then he cuts up the cow and puts it on top. But he doesn't light a fire. And the next thing he does is he digs a trench, a ditch, all the way around that altar. And then he says, get some water. So the ditch is big enough, has enough capacity to hold about 5 gallons. So they dump pitcher after pitcher over the top of the cow and the wood and the stones, and the ditch is full of water now. And then about the time of the evening sacrifice, he prays a prayer that in Hebrew lasts about 30 seconds. So the prophets of Baal have been dancing and jumping and leaping all over and cutting themselves and howling and screaming for hours and hours and hours. And he just says, Lord, you are the God, and let this people know that you are the God and that you're turning their hearts back to you. And you know what happened next? Fire came out of the sky, burned up the cow and the wood and the stones. The fire vaporized everything, and all the water in the trench was evaporated. There's nothing left. And the people all say, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. Now, sadly, that revival, if that's what that was, didn't last. But at that moment, they did acknowledge that God is God. So I just gave you all the rest of the answers too. So at the bottom of page 28, number 12, immediately after his declaration, Elijah left and God provided secure hiding places for him. How long had it been now? 3 years. Number 13, what was King Ahab doing this particular day? Well, Ahab and his steward, Obadiah, were surveying the land looking for grass to keep the royal horses, mules, and cattle alive. So in a drought, sometimes rather than letting animals suffer, you have to put them down because they're dying of thirst. And so, and of starvation too, because the feed is gone. So they're checking for any places where there might be, you know, a shady place where there's still some grass. So that's what Obadiah and Ahab are doing. Number 14, what had Ahab been doing for the past 3 years? Looking everywhere for Elijah. And Obadiah actually told Elijah, there is not a kingdom anywhere within hundreds of miles where my master Ahab has not sent an envoy to find out, is Elijah hiding among you? Because I'd like to have a little chat with him. So Ahab has been looking everywhere, trying to track down Elijah. And number 15, what did Ahab say when he finally saw Elijah? Is that you troubler of Israel? You know, we don't have any record of Elijah and Ahab ever having met previously. So the only time that Ahab ever saw Elijah face to face was when he walked into his throne room and said, it's not going to rain. So, you know, he had about 15 seconds to get a mental image of him. So he's saying, is that you troubler of Israel? 16, what was Elijah's reply? I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, because you have forsaken the commandments of Yahweh and you have followed the Baals. So Elijah, you know, Ahab is thinking in terms of, you've disrupted my kingdom, there's suffering, there's death, animals are starving, this is horrible, you've caused all this. And Elijah turns it right around and says, you want to talk about trouble? This little drought is no trouble at all compared to the trouble that you, Ahab, have brought to this nation. You are the real trouble, because you have led this nation in turning your back on God and walking away from him. And you have led the people in a false religion. And that is real trouble. So he's, being very, very clear, very forceful. Number 17, Elijah challenged King Ahab to gather all Israel, together with 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of the Asherah, to Mount Carmel. Did Ahab agree? Yes, he did. I suspect that he felt cornered. He can't really kill Elijah, because Elijah is the one who brought the drought on. And so, you can't kill him. If he has the power to stop the rain, then we've got somehow to get him to agree to bring the rain back. So if Elijah is saying, I want to have a meeting with all the prophets, we're going to meet up on top of Mount Carmel, we're going to have an audience. Ahab says, okay, we can do that. So summarize, number 18, the events atop Mount Carmel. What happened?
Elijah was able to best all the 450 prophets. He made fun of them, he taunted them. They couldn't make the calf, their gods couldn't make the calf burn up, but after he surrounded it with water, did everything he could to make it more difficult, called on God, and the whole thing vaporized, and that was also the glory of God.
Exactly. And that's the key thought, the glory of God. God is glorified, and everybody there knows it. Everybody sees the results of that. They all see, the soaking wet altar and a cut up ox. They all see it, and then, 5 seconds later, they all see it burned up to nothing, to ashes. So, there's no denying God heard Elijah's prayer, and he answered in a very real, tangible, visible way. So God is glorified in that moment. Number 19, what do you think Ahab thought of this?
I think he secretly feared God.
Yeah.
He knew
Yeah.
it was really truly God.
I've wondered about that too, and I've wondered, why would he keep on being so stubborn? Is it because he didn't want to lose face with his wife? And I don't know. But anybody who saw that must have had pause. Just, I just saw something that cannot be explained by any natural thing or by the action of Baal, because the prophets of Baal and Asherah had, 9 hours or something to do their business. They couldn't do a thing. So,
Pastor, it's kind of like Pharaoh, the 9 times
yes,
he said no,
yes,
no, after seeing all
yes, excellent. So I would think that there would be a connection there between the stubbornness of Pharaoh and Ahab and his hard heart. So number 20, Elijah told Ahab to ride in his chariot to Jezreel, that's a valley down below, because rain for the first time in 3 years was coming. And what happened on the way? The hand of Yahweh was on Elijah, and he girded up his garment and outran Ahab. So remember, everybody in those days, they don't wear pants. They wear robes, and they have a belt or a sash. And if you're going to run or have physical activity, you hike your robe up so it doesn't get tangled in your feet. So you hike it up to your knees and tuck it into your belt so that you can run. So that's what girded. He girded up his garment. That's what that means. Similar to John 21, Peter and James and John are on a boat. Jesus is cooking breakfast on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and Peter girded up, or actually took off his outer garment, that's his robe. He's got a tunic on, and then he dove in the water and swam to shore. Elijah got ready to run, and he did run, and he outran Ahab, who's got horses and a chariot, all the way to Jezreel. So what are some lessons to learn from King Ahab's early reign? Number 21. Don't,
Not to marry foreign.
okay, don't worship Sidon, don't marry Sidonians, don't worship false gods, Paula.
Power corrupts.
Yes, yeah. And we see it over and over again. We see that in good kings, we see it in bad kings, we see it in kings who started out well, and then they get to be king and they kind of like it. So power does corrupt, and especially if the power, the king, does not have his heart aligned with God. Very quickly, things are going to go sideways. Any other applications? So we're going to shut down our live stream now. We thank those who have joined us via live stream, and tune in again later.